Hold up. Sollosi's got to play easy. We got to wait.
Okay.
All right. No, hold on. Okay, there we go.
That is not a bad game with good music. It is a good game with good music.
Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. I'm your host, Mike Salbato, and today we are talking about bad games with good music, or maybe something more diplomatic than that.
My vote is Legacy of the Cheetah Men, but that name requires some explaining, so I understand if it's a little too weird.
It might get people to click, but it would be very, very confusing. Yes, that's true. So, yeah, well, at some point today, we will figure out what to call this, because, we don't necessarily want to say all these games are bad, but they are games that many people would consider not great.
Let's just say the music is the highlight.
The music is the highlight, yes.
I am 100% certain that at least a couple listeners will hear music from a game they absolutely love and feel a little upset about it, because we don't know everyone's childhood. There are some super fans of the terrible Super Famicom games that I'm about to share tonight, but I am not one of them, and I am firm in my belief that at least my selections are good music from bad games.
Not speaking for anyone else's.
Yeah,
that's a good caveat.
Yeah, these are only the opinions of 4 individuals, and so please don't have your feelings hurt if one of us hates on a game that you love, because
right. Or it's based on their general reputations, or like some aspect of the game that makes them unpalatable for us.
Yeah, well, see, that's why it's kind of a mouthful, but that's still why I like the title of something like Subjectively Bad Games, but Objectively Good Music.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to be charitable. Your childhood is a lie.
Oh, well, we're going there.
There are a couple games I thought about borrowing music from, but I think they're too well liked by the general populace for me to bring on this show, because that would just be me being cruel. But whatever, the 2 I picked are stinkers, so I'm confident in those choices. Oh, should we say our names before we start sharing the good music?
Well, we all got excited about it. So you've already heard everyone else, but along with me today is Hilary Andreff.
Hello.
Mike Sollosi.
That's me.
And Peter Triezenberg.
That would be me.
So, yeah, as you can see, we all have opinions about this already. So, I had a hard time picking these, because I went from I don't know what to pick, because I'm not saying I never play bad games, but I'm particular enough usually in what I buy that I usually get something when I know I'm most likely going to like it. So I haven't played a whole lot of games I feel are really bad. But I found some.
I don't think most people go out of their way to experience bad games. Sometimes it's a combination of this is what I had access to as a kid, or sometimes it's like, oh, this is a game in a series that I really like that turned out to be not so great, or any number of factors. Generally speaking, I don't think, unless you're a connoisseur of garbage, I don't think anyone really goes out of their way to experience bad media.
That's true.
When I was younger, I did a lot of game renting, and I would rent games based on a cover or based on an idea of what I thought the game was.
Oh, yeah.
And both games I brought today are unfortunate rental discoveries. But like, as I got older and I was buying games with my own money and doing online research before I would buy something, I'm still disappointed by games sometimes, or often enough for me to remember several. But they don't have the same tone as playing a game when I'm very young, wanting to like it because this is going to be my new game for the weekend, and then discovering, oh no, this isn't good at all. So it's but I mean, spoiler alert, both of the games that I picked today are that exact story, probably not even that far away from each other.
Yeah, probably not.
And it's a little strange to think that experience isn't really at all as prevalent as it once was.
No, I mean, can you even rent games anymore?
I think the modern version of that is having something like PS Plus or Game Pass,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
and just having free games dumped on you, and maybe playing one on a whim because you have it, and then
Yeah.
not liking it. But it's different. Like with old rentals, it's like I am committing time and money because this is going to be my new game, and I need to at least get something out of it. And to discover that it's a lemon is a special kind of disappointment.
There is GameFly, but although I don't
Oh, yeah.
know,
Right.
I know that they've definitely have a committed audience for sure. But most of the time, whenever I see them, it's because they're selling pre-used games.
Yeah, and they tried to be Netflix for games, except their version of Netflix is the ones that would still mail you the DVDs. And now like Game Pass and PS Plus are being Netflix for games, except now it's the streaming version of Netflix, and I know which one I like better.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
So, want to celebrate some trash?
Sure.
I love me some trash, guys. Sign me up.
In the background here, play the "I Love Trash" song from Oscar the Grouch.
Aw.
I don't want this show to get taken down though.
Hey, HBO does not have the money to spend on DMCA takedowns from Sesame Street music. We're good.
Yeah, man, they just cut a bunch of Sesame Street episodes, and then Sesame Street uploaded them to YouTube for free because they're chads.
Nice.
Sesame Street are like, I love the OG Muppets as much as anybody. So Sesame Street, like those people are my friends and family, including you, Oscar.
So let's be connoisseurs of trash.
Connoisseurs of trash.
I love trash. Is that the episode title?
It could be. It could be. Oh boy.
Put Oscar on the graphics somewhere.
Yep. All right. That's a thought. He'll just be holding copies of Lagoon and Arcana. One thing before we get into it, I want to start doing this because I was going through this, our track list here, and noticed how many games are on this show that have never been on here before, which I guess for this topic is probably not surprising, but I think it's worth noting that 7 of our 8 games today have never been on the show before. So these are all debuts for Rhythm Encounter. I don't know how many will be back. Although I think maybe a couple of these might be in the future.
I didn't do this research. I'm excited to learn which one is the repeat offender.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you at the end.
No, well, when the time comes and that game comes up, because I know it's neither of the ones I brought on.
No,
that's impossible.
It's definitely not. All right. Well, one of your songs is our first pick today. So what are we opening up with?
Right. This song is called Atland, and it is the sort of opening area song from Lagoon, a truly putrid Super Nintendo game.
All right. After that is your first song, Hilary.
All right, so my first song is Fight Tune, A Girl Named Shelke, from the Dirge of Cerberus soundtrack, which I guess would fall more into the category of shameless spinoff, maybe, more than anything else. I don't know.
Maybe. I feel like it's one of the lesser regarded parts of that compilation, so I think you're safe.
We are going to get a reader email from the one person who cites Dirge of Cerberus as their favorite game. It's happening.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be me in a trench coat and a face mask.
Chosen based on reputation, nothing else.
Yes.
And because I like the music. It's a good Hamauzu soundtrack.
It's great.
So,
It has a good soundtrack.
yes.
All right.
Well, Lagoon has a great soundtrack from Zoom Sound Team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go listen before we start talking too
Let's
much.
go listen to Atland and Fight Tune, A Girl Named Shelke.
I think it's Shelke. I'm not.
Oh, whoops.
Okay.
I'm not 100%.
Shelke.
That's my favorite Xenoblade Chronicles character. So that was Lagoon, which is a very negative memory of my childhood because I rented that when I was probably less than 10 years old, let's say in the 8, 9, 10 age range. And again, it was a fantasy action RPG. It vaguely reminded me of Zelda. It had sort of an energetic opening town song and opening field area for its soundtrack. And that bop you just heard is Atland, which is sort of it's like the starting zone. It's like you go out into a vaguely forested, grassy area, but leading to the first dungeon. And again, I thought it was roughly a Zelda clone at the time, but now that I am much older and think back to it and recognize the very awkward enemy positioning and the ways to die very easily and extra damage from the rear, and realize, no, it's not a bad Zelda clone, it's a bad East clone. This game is like playing one of the top-down East games, except your sword is maybe a millimeter long, and in the latter half of the game, where I couldn't continue, enemies kill you in one hit. So it's like the Dark Souls of bad East games, which is a real weird metaphor that I did not think I would be making on a podcast. But so anyway, I have a negative memory of Lagoon, and I've always sort of thought of it as one of my least favorite Super Nintendo games. But when we were researching for this episode, like, I remember those first opening minutes of liking Lagoon's music and being interested in continuing the game, and thought, oh, that's exactly what I'm going to submit for this episode. And we made this idea topic on our ideas board many years ago, or a couple years ago. And when you said that on a previous podcast, I think it was the strategy RPG episode, that this one was coming up, or it was the Super Nintendo episode. I immediately knew I wanted a Lagoon song. So with the past couple of weeks, I listened to the entire Lagoon soundtrack and landed on this song from early in the game. So yeah, Atland, Lagoon. Maybe listen to this YouTube link. Don't play Lagoon. I urge you.
That's good general advice for this episode. Listen to the music. Maybe don't play the game. I thought it was cool how Atland had an almost Baroque sound. Like, there's a really interesting melody and counter melody going on, but it's got a kind of more modern drum beat too, which makes it, as everyone was saying, just like a very engrossing song that you want to bop to.
The bass and the drums really drive it along a little bit and give the song more energy with its but the sound library is just screams Super Nintendo game field map music to me. It's I feel like listening to this, you immediately know the kind of area that you're in.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, this was immediately just super catchy. I've been dancing to this on and off while preparing for this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's either the first town and the first field area, or just one of those. But yeah. So sorry to interrupt, Peter.
No, you're not interrupting at all. I really enjoyed this song. I think it's a really pleasant melody. I think it's very upbeat and catchy. I'm also living for this box art that they've got in the YouTube video that you linked us. The 3D action fantasy that is attracting RPG players in waves. I don't know anything about Lagoon, but I feel like maybe wasn't that hot.
There's a reason that not many people have heard of this game, and that's because it maybe did not make the waves that its box art suggests.
But it sure did make ocean puns.
Yeah, it sure did. Do we know how the original, the PC version was received, though? I don't know how faithful the Super Nintendo version is to the PC one.
That'd be interesting to know.
I did not do that level of research because, frankly, I'm not sure this game deserves that level of research. But I mean, East games also were sort of PC first before getting ported to other systems. So I think maybe Lagoon was an indie game. Again, it's developed by by Kemco, SaGa, and the music was done by Zoom Sound Team. So this is a sort of a B PC game that was ported later to Super Nintendo. It's pretty old. I think the Super Nintendo port is something like 91 or 92. I'd have to look it up. But
actually, I am going to be talking about that part. Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. But again, I remember being in the brief time I was excited by this game before being disappointed, really liking the early music, and I sort of rediscovered that when I was doing some soundtrack sampling for this podcast.
Yeah, I wish I had thought about that question right, before I asked it, or thought about it a few days ago, because I did look up a bit of stuff on this game, but did not see if the PC version was received well at all or not. I did think it was interesting that this game released, if this is accurate, released in December of 1991, which means it came out only a few months after the Super Nintendo itself came out, at least in North America. So it was a very, very early Super Nintendo game, which tells me that they probably did not spend a lot of time on it. I don't know. I feel like moving something like that to the Super Nintendo back then, I don't know. It's kind of surprising to me they would get it on the Super Nintendo that early, within a few months of its release. So it seems like it was like, hey, let's get this out the door as quick as we can, which might explain some things. Kind of like the Super Nintendo or Nintendo. Which one has like old Ultima and King's Quest? Then a couple of those get ported to Nintendo.
There is a Super Nintendo port of both Ultima 6 and Ultima 7, if I recall correctly.
And I think there's NES ports of King's Quest games, so both.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's weird because Ultima 6 on the Super Nintendo is like a straight port of the PC version, but you have to control it with a D-pad.
It's so bad!
And then the Ultima 7 port tries to turn it into Link's Awakening and takes out everything that was in the game. And yeah, neither one is a good port.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's what happened here, but...
So should I expect some Ultima music later in this episode? Because it sounds like it.
Unfortunately, I didn't pick any, but I could have.
No, I was thinking of the cool, mysterious opening from Ultima 6, but I did not end up doing it, which maybe I should have.
That's okay. We got some good stuff here anyway. So, I did enjoy the song. I mean, half my notes were just weird, the weird trivia that, this game was probably rushed out, which explains some things, but I don't know what happened with the game, but boy, the Zoom sound team did some great work on the music, though.
Good job, Zoom Sound Team.
Thanks, Zoom Sound Team, if you're listening.
Yeah, I looked up the handful of members of Zoom Sound Team, and most of the rest of their oeuvre is not very impressive, although I am intrigued by the title Godzilla Legend 3 Dialogue of the Infantians and Voyage to Dream Quest.
Voyage to Dream Quest?
Yeah. Godzilla Legend 2 Voyage to Dream Quest. That I would have rented that if I saw that on the shelf as an 8-year-old. But
is that a Godzilla RPG?
Oh,
instead
man.
I got Lagoon.
Did you ever play, speaking of old games, did you ever rent the Godzilla game on the NES? The weird sort of strategy game where you move on a grid?
I don't think so, no. I did rent the terrible Roger Rabbit game from 3D for the NES, which has a very, very early David Wise soundtrack.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, that increases the likelihood of good music.
Yeah. It's so hard to sit here and talk about rental games and not just keep flashing to weird old box art.
Yep.
As soon as Sollosi mentioned I rented this for the box art, I'm picturing things because I just heard a song from it the other day, Power Blade, if anyone knows what that is. It's an NES game. It's an NES game, and it's this I think I played the first one, not the second one, but the cover art is this huge, just majorly buff guy with a big metal boomerang. You fight with a boomerang. But it's why do you need to be that buff to fight with a boomerang?
I just looked it up. Oh my god.
Look, if this is an enormous boomerang, then maybe it's heavy. I mean, did you think about that? Also, just generally speaking, I think video games gave me very unrealistic expectations about the general performance of boomerangs. Because
that's absolutely true.
You wield a boomerang in real life, you aren't throwing it and hitting 8 slimes before it comes back. Absolutely not.
No.
Is this a Final Fantasy 13 subtweet?
No, it wasn't, but it could have been. Maybe. All right. I promise I promise some boomerang content at the next FF13 episode, Peter.
Excellent.
Fair enough.
It's I don't know why upgrading my Hawkeye to an Eagle Talon makes your lightning better, but here we are. Maybe we should talk about more than one song on this episode. How does that sound?
We could talk about Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy segue.
That's a good segue.
Another Hamauzu game, in fact.
Yep, there we go. All right, we have it.
And Hilary, before you go, I have to say, this song did give me some Blinded by Light vibes. With the thump and the strings. But please continue.
Yeah, and I honestly think that type of vibe is why I picked it. Because I'm going to be honest, I would love to hear about your experiences with Dirge of Cerberus, because I actually did not play it, but I was listening to the soundtrack. I found the soundtrack, I think at Book Off when I was visiting New York, when they still had import soundtracks, and because it was a Hamauzu soundtrack, I grabbed it. And I really just was particularly drawn to this song because I thought it was a good example of some of those kind of like more intimidating, slower, but then they kind of build. Like, Hamauzu has kind of a distinctive way with battle themes sometimes. And I think this was a good example of that. So that's the main reason I picked it. Just like lots of little flourishes, but very dark and broody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know why I never actually got through playing this one, because you can't
let
not
me
like
think.
Well, no, I mean, like I didn't know anything about it. I bought it when it came out, and I'm like, well, I like Vincent and the art. Like, I love the art in this game. Like, I like
I actually have artwork of this game on my wall.
Yeah.
There are more members of the Seven cast there than you would expect.
Yeah, I mean that too. But I mean, I do know that when I bought it, I got it on some kind of sale, because I remember coming home that day with like 5 games for like dirt cheap. So I don't remember what the other ones were exactly, but I remember I bought a whole stack of them. So of course I wasn't going to get to some of them.
I remember when I first bought a PS2 a little bit late in 2004, I immediately went to GameStop and got a bunch of used games, including like the first Ratchet and Clank and the first Devil May Cry. So not all of those that I picked up were winners, but there is some fun in going to buying some cheap used games. But I mean,
fun.
Yeah, that experience isn't as common nowadays. I think maybe digital sales have replaced it.
Yeah,
that's a good like comparison. Yeah.
Because everything I've gotten some. I used to get some pretty good deals at like used game stores, but nowadays hardly anything goes down to like below maybe 40. And
yeah,
it's like if you're looking for rare games, I mean, good luck. Forget older games.
I actually just got one like last month. I don't know if I remember to share it with you guys in Slack, but we were in GameStop just randomly, and there was a copy of Ori, the second Ori game.
Or Ori and the Will o' the Wisps.
Yes, thank
Will o'
you.
the Wisps.
Yeah. See, that's why I didn't want to say it. But it was the like big fat like steelbook collector's edition for Xbox One, which of course I don't have. But it was everything was in there. The art book, the 2 soundtracks that it comes with, and there was just like a pile of stickers, and they could not get this. They could not sell this thing. It was marked down to $10. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. I will spend $10 on this game that I don't have a console for, if only for the music.
Ironically, last month I did buy some used games from my local used game store, East Arland, which is a great used game store, and I finally got a copy of Suikoden 5 that way, but it was considerably more than $40. Let's just say, but a while ago, I think over a year ago, the Square Enix store was doing one of their big blowout sales just to clear some inventory, and despite never playing any game in the trilogy, I bought a special edition including soundtrack and art book Final Fantasy 13-2 game.
Oh yeah, I've got that.
for 10 bones, yeah.
Yeah, I've got that collector's box too.
Me too. It's really nice.
It's like I only own the first FF13, and I haven't played any of them, but I think I want this, so I went for it.
I mean, absolutely worth it to get the entire soundtrack.
Yeah, or maybe it's a sound selection, but
it's the whole thing. Soundtrack.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But the package is worth it. So I guess that the feeling of discovering a used game for cheap is not dead yet. But
and I guess we associate Dirge of Cerberus with this feeling.
Putting all of that aside for a moment, Dirge of Cerberus is easily the weakest part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, like that we got over here. I would say. I mean, I don't know if Last Order or if the mobile phone game starring the Turks was any good, but
was that wasn't before Crisis? No.
That was before Crisis.
Yeah, that was before Crisis. Okay, yeah, I was mixing up my before Crisis and Crisis cores and core values, and I don't even know.
But Dirge is basically a bad Devil May Cry clone where your melee combat feel whiffs constantly and does nothing. So instead, you're stuck with a not good third-person shooter, and I also love it. This game is. Of course you do. No, okay. Here's the thing. I don't like playing it. However, it is pure mid 2000s edge, and my Hot Topic wearing ass is all over Vincent Valentine and all of this. I've got a Vincent Valentine figure on my shelf. I've got art from this game on my walls.
I recorded FF13. I've recorded FF13 episodes and Final Fantasy VII Advent Children episodes and Final Fantasy VII Remake episodes with Peter, so let's just say this is in character for you, buddy.
Look, the moment that they reveal Vincent Valentine in the remake, I will spontaneously combust out of sheer horniness.
Oh, the entire world will become 1% more moist because of that trailer when it happens.
Yes,
exactly. It is going to be out of control, and I'm looking forward to our shared alliterative boyfriend as well.
Yeah, but but all that aside, again, Dirge of Cerberus' soundtrack is really good. I adore this song. I think the intro to it is really intimidating with the drums, the way it kind of builds in, and then all of a sudden it gets kind of soothing. I really like the strings. The Blinded by Light comparison is very apt.
Yeah,
sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like Shelke as a character. I was very excited when she came back in World of Final Fantasy as a summon, because that's kind of a deep cut. We don't really see the Dirge of Cerberus characters anymore until 7 Remake, baby!
Well, I have not played this game, and so some of the compilation of FF7 characters that I met in Final Fantasy VII Remake were, I think, Peter, you told me they were from the compilation.
Vice and Nero were added in Intergrade.
Right, so I don't know those because I haven't played Intergrade yet. But I did feel like Hamauzu's work in 13. I can feel some of the DNA from this Dirge of Cerberus song in there. The very sort of somber strings at the beginning, and then the higher violin melody is almost like a woman singing, and then the piano sort of tinkling in after the violin. It gives this song a softness that contrasts against the hardness of the deep strings and percussion at the beginning. It's a good song, and but I have no earthly idea who Shelke is. And you could have told me that it was like the internet putting the gender swapping crown on Shelke from Xenoblade Chronicles, and I would have believed you.
And apologies for calling her Shelke earlier. Shows you how much I know the game.
You could have fooled me because I'm not sure how that's supposed to be pronounced.
From what I read a little bit about the plot and her as a character, and it also sounds like the song fits her pretty well, which I definitely appreciate because she's a character that's kind of been through a lot and is kind of trying to get past her trauma, and so I kind of appreciate how this theme kind of reflects that with just some really intense, kind of intimidating parts, and then some light little flourishes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
More than I know. My only interaction with Shelke is because she is one of 800 characters in Final Fantasy Record Keeper.
I think they get more into her backstory in the multiplayer for Dirge of Cerberus that we never got. Because the multiplayer mode in this game was a whole separate thing about people who were stuck in Deep Ground's training program, and it's it was a completely separate game mode, and they just cut it from the North American release.
And that's where she was.
Was it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that she was. Yeah, I think they cut the multiplayer completely, but I'm not 100% sure if there was local multiplayer in the game. But it wasn't this mode. This mode was a whole online thing that required.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it required you had to connect your PS2 to the internet, just to play FF11.
Yeah, the weird modem that came with certain PS2 games. Weird PS2 Online hasn't aged great. It was a completely separate lobby and part of the game for the first Monster Hunter as well.
Cries in Resident Evil Outbreak file.
But yeah, I have not played this game, but now that I know it's a Hamauzu soundtrack before his work on FF13, I'm a little intrigued by it. So this might not be my last venture into it.
It's also got 2 gapped songs on the soundtrack because this was the game that introduced Genesis. Sorry, this is bringing back a lot of memories from high school, and not all of them are good ones.
I'm seeing that.
I'm kidding.
No, I know, it's fine. Yeah. Wow, we've talked about this one a lot. My comments were basically somewhat what you guys said. Hamauzu was not really on my radar until Final Fantasy 13, so I actually missed all the music in this game the first time through. So I need to go back and listen to more of it, because since 13, I've definitely become a big fan of his work. So this is this actually a battle theme, or is it just named that for the heck of it?
No, I think it's a fight. It's fight.
It is a fight.
Fight
Okay.
tunes are the battle music.
You
Good.
do fight her. You do fight her.
I'm just making sure. But I liked it for that. I like that it's a battle theme because it has enough drama to be a battle theme, but it's also really restrained in what we would expect for a battle song. So
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at when I explained why I picked it. It's, it's somber rather than just kind of like the expected rock fast pace. We're
Exactly.
fighting now.
Mm-hmm.
We're fighting regretfully instead.
Yeah.
Or maybe something like that.
Fighting regretfully could also be a title of this episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it kind of like Sollosi said, though, like now, after especially hearing Peter talk about it, listening to the song, I'm like, maybe I need to actually try this game.
Or watch the cutscenes.
Or watch the cutscenes.
I have no interest in trying this game. Some interest in listening to more of its music, because I mean,
okay.
That's fair.
my time is limited now. If I'm not playing a game for the podcast, I better know that I'm going to like it.
Just got to stream it.
That's true.
Actually, one of our former streamers mentioned to me on a podcast that this was one of his favorite PS2 games. So I know this game has its fans out there somewhere.
All right. Shall we move on to block 2 finally?
Block
Yes.
2.
Yes.
This episode is going to be 4 hours long.
I know.
More Hamauzu.
More Hamauzu. That's a great idea. Hey, guess what? The next song is also by Hamauzu. So we're starting the next block with my first pick, which is Battle Theme 1 from Unlimited SaGa. And then, Sollosi, we have your other song here.
That's right. My song choice is Second Armageddon by Hirokazu Ando from the Super Nintendo game Arcana, another disappointing rental from my youth.
All right. Let's go listen to Battle Theme 1 and Second Armageddon. So, hey, speaking of Hamauzu, here's this song. I had a note where I was going to randomly reference Blinded by Light, even though we already did that in the last song. So I hate to do it, but I'm just going to get it out of the way that, yes, this could be a precursor to Blinded by Light. Because I do get some similar instrumentation here as well. But I also feel like the song definitely stands on its own. So I just wanted to say that and get past it. Here we are.
It's kind of funny because one of my notes actually says like the song uses some of the same tools as the last one to very different effects. So it's kind of like a little bit brighter. It's sort of more like the like ramped up portion of Blinded by Light versus the like slower portion of Blinded by Light.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start calling Hamauzu the king of strings now, because both of these violin parts from Shelke's theme and from this Unlimited SaGa song are just so fun and energetic.
Mm-hmm.
But the percussion is much brighter in this song compared to Shelke's theme or Blinded by Light, and I just love that. I guess it's an electric bass, but that sort of it's like that sort of medium tone electric bass that's playing throughout. It adds an element of funk that the other two Hamauzu songs we're talking about lack, I think.
Yeah, and there's like a little jazzy piano interlude in this one too.
I'm really vibing with the piano in this. Like, that's really good.
And even the image I'm looking at from the YouTube video is like, it looks like 70s funky wallpaper with pastel, like the set of a game show or something. So I'm envisioning the cast of Unlimited SaGa as being on the 1978 version of the dating game.
Excellent. And I've officially decided that I'm okay with Hamauzu using like these kind of jazzy, funky elements. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the violin in the song just is so good. I love it so much. So I will give a quick shout out, by the way, to Pat Gann, who was maybe not going to be on this episode, but then we filled up. So I did offer to bring a song partially in his honor, and he recommended this one specifically. I listened to about half of the Limited SaGa soundtrack just to see. Like, I wanted my input too, but like this is definitely one of the standouts, so I did go with it. So
Yay.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Like, how many tracks are on that soundtrack? Because if anything, Hamauzu always over delivers. Like, how many hundreds of songs were in the soundtrack of 7 Remake?
The Dirge of Cerberus soundtrack is also surprisingly lengthy.
The 7 Remake soundtrack is what, 6 or 7 discs?
I think
this one's only 2.
I think it's
Okay,
6 discs with a little something else, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so so this isn't a like 100 plus track marathon the way the 7 Remake soundtrack is, which is fine. He's allowed to do it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to count the many arrange albums for SaGa, then I'm sure it adds up though over time. But yeah, it's just the combination of instruments in the song is just, I don't know, it's a very unique battle theme. I think it's so fun to listen to. I recommend the whole soundtrack, of course, but even though this game is, well, I'm sorry to the fan of this game if you're listening. I will admit I have not played it myself. I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone who liked it, or at least could wrap their head around it, just because it's so strange and maybe more board game than RPG. I applaud that they were doing something weird and experimental, but from most people I've ever talked to, maybe it didn't work so well. But no complaints about the music.
I have only really put hard time into 2 SaGa games, and they were both for the Game Boy. But I liked them, so I have an admiration for a lot of what SaGa is, but that's just fine. I'm not interested in playing them anymore. Although I have heard good things about Scarlet Grace. If I were to dip my toe into the SaGa Lagoon again, it would probably be that game.
Yeah, I have no experience with Unlimited SaGa, unfortunately. Outside of an old YouTube video that was basically just tearing the game a new one. But I really do like this song. As we've already spoken the praises of Hamauzu already. The strings are magnificent. I really love that piano. And it's just very, very upbeat and kind of peppy for a battle theme, you know. It sounds very, very lush. So I enjoyed this one a lot.
Lush is a good descriptor.
In general, the SaGa games just have really good music in general. Like they have a very unique soundscape.
It's kind of interesting because I'm comparing it in my head to Furious Battle, which is from a SaGa game disguised as a Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy Legend, and that one was on Game Boy.
Yeah. Final SaGa 1, 2, and 3 were released as Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3 worldwide, and that's how I played SaGa as FF Legend 2. That's my jam.
And it's just really, really cool. There are actually a surprising number of similarities, and I'm impressed at like how well that translated and how he was able to get that kind of consistent like feel and compositional signature between that first Furious Battle like Game Boy theme and this piece.
Yeah.
Like, I can actually see the connection musically.
I gotta go listen to Furious Battle now.
Yep.
So I almost said if you're listening to this episode, but that would be kind of a silly statement, wouldn't it? That song did appear in episode 85 of Rhythm Encounter, so I will give a shout out there to listen to that episode.
It was also analyzed with a fantastic 8-bit music theory.
Yes. All right. I can't possibly think of a segue to lead into this song title. Who's got one?
Boy. Well, I mean, you think you prevented the apocalypse when you finished the RPG the first time, but what about the second apocalypse or Armageddon?
What about second Armageddon?
We've had one, yes. What about second Armageddon?
It's like I'm imagining
I don't think he knows about it.
No, I'm imagining a bunch of of Lovecraftian gods sitting around a table. But yes, what about second Armageddon? But yes. This is Arcana, which is a very opaque sort of dungeon crawling RPG for the Super Nintendo that I think was influenced by Wizardry or Ultima a little bit, but with a little bit more like anime image flair. But the maps were confusing. The combat was difficult. If any of your human characters died, then it was game over, and you lost your progress. But if one of the spirits you summoned died, because your party is three humans and one spirit. If your spirit died, then you can revive them. But and just like being incredibly frustrated by the battle system and not really being able to make it past the, I want to say, third dungeon because of like random battle stupidity and just getting lost in badly arranged first person dungeons gave this game a very negative taste in my mouth. It was
sounds like Ultima.
Yeah. It really might have been the same year I rented Lagoon. I rented Arcana. There's a real chance of that, but I have no idea exactly when either of those events happened. But the music's not bad, and they use that sort of opening motif, the ba ba da ba da ba da, like that the delightful Super Nintendo horns execute. They use that for their random battle theme, the boss battle theme, and this song, which is the final battle theme. But with sort of a different level of drama for each of those. So this is the fanciest, spiciest, most dramatic of those battle themes, and I think it's sort of the best listen on the Arcana soundtrack that I again listened to or re-listened to sometime in the last 2 weeks. But I can't recommend this game. It's like maybe if you had a map or a guide, it would be way easier, because it really was getting lost in the dungeon. Was what I hated about it, and this is early-ish in the game. I think the third dungeon again. Like Darwin had just joined my party, for all of you Arcana heads out there. But but the music is good, and just this the 16-bit strings and brass at different points, and the sort of percussive counter melody that's not really drums, but the dunk like feels like a like, you know, an orchestral chime or something. That it just really screams. It reminds me of like 20 other Super Nintendo soundtracks of this era, which is a very specific nostalgia hit to my brain, like you know, games like Lufia 2, or maybe Tales of Fantasia. Like this has a Super Nintendo Final Battle sound that I just love, but I maybe it's better with game FAQs on your side, but I can't recommend going back and playing this. this awkward as hell first-person dungeon RPG.
A dungeon RPG made by HAL of all companies.
Yeah,
Like,
don't
how'd
know
that
what that's
happen?
about.
I don't know. Like they went from making things like Kirby's Adventure and The Adventures of Lolo, which are 3 of my favorite NES games, and then they're like, also here's this.
Yeah, there was Kirby's Adventure. We talked about Kirby a little bit on the recent episode of Retro Encounter, but Kirby's Adventure, Kirby Superstar are all-time greats on the NES and SNES. Arcana is not. I I didn't understand RPGs then as well as I do now. So the back of my mind is like, maybe it's not as bad as you remember, but I really do have a negative feeling about this one. But I think the final boss track is good. I'm not going to take that away from it.
I was to say, it's a lot happier than I would expect from a song called Second Armageddon. Like, it sounds very upbeat. And I didn't know the context of this song going into this podcast. Now that I know it's a boss theme, I'm like, okay, that makes a little more sense. This is like getting you pumped up, get fight music. And I think I think it works for that.
And it's so interesting that I think that's kind of something that a lot of like this type of Super Nintendo era like boss battle music tried to do. It was like there was a little bit of like, you can do this kind of tone to it with the horns and the odd little like pan fluty kind of sounding part, and just like kind of, and that the melodic handoffs, you have a bunch of different instruments instead of it just being like, oh god, what's happening, like some later consoles.
What you called a flute sound, I know is just 16-bit SNES woodwinds, but I can't even attach an instrument to it. It's like no, this is a 16-bit game trying to be a flute or a whistle of some kind, and I identify it more as a video game sound than as emulating an actual instrument.
That is absolutely fair.
Well,
Seventh SaGa. That's another game that this gives me vibes of. It's like this is Seventh SaGa instrumentation.
But you have much more positive associations with Seventh SaGa.
I love. I'm not going to call the Seventh SaGa a good game, but I love it. That's true. Because the American version of Seventh SaGa has badly tuned difficulty. That is its own podcast worth of complaining. But yeah, I like Seventh SaGa way more than any SaGa game, in fact.
Well, I made a mistake. I made a mistake in letting Peter go first because you literally said the exact same thing that I built my entire notes around. So I know that's always a risk.
But you can still
Sorry.
the punchline.
It's true. No, I mean, the first thing I thought of, like, just because of the instruments used, like you guys talked about, I was like, I never knew that the end of the world could sound so upbeat. So I guess once you live through one, you take a more cavalier, Buffy-like approach, in which you have to ask what the plural of apocalypse is, which I still don't have an answer to. So, which is why we just have Second Armageddon.
But I mean, as RPG players, we all can understand that because, we've played our way through several.
Yes.
I think maybe you would drop the first S and say apocalypes, because the plural of Cyclops is Cyclopes.
Oh,
that is true.
Okay.
So it might be apocalypes, even though our English language brain wants to say apocalypses.
I see.
But because it's an English word, it probably is apocalypses. But if you want to go to the Greek root, it's probably apocalypes, which does not sound good coming out of my mouth. But just going back to my Greek mythology studies and the Cyclopes is where my head went.
Okay.
Fair.
I like it enough. So, all right. Next time I'm commenting on Sarah Michelle Gellar's Instagram, I'll let her know. It's like, I know you're still wondering about this.
The plural of apocalypse is Armageddons. There we go. Problem solved.
But anyway, as for the music, I do like the incredibly triumphant trumpets. I could not say that fast. And they
truly triumphant trumpets.
Yeah. And then the electronic flute or wind instrument or Super Nintendo flute, whatever we want to call it.
That's it. That's the name.
The Super Nintendo flute.
Yes.
So no, I like it. It's like you guys said, like it's that very common Super Nintendo thing of like motivating you to like, get through this thing you're doing.
It is. This is very much you can do it. Kinda.
Exactly. So anyway, that's all I got. I apparently also wrote in my notes, I'll also say that despite being only slightly newer than Lagoon, M-, and then I must have got distracted because I didn't know where I was going with that thought.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So That was it. I had a punchline and yay trumpets and yay flute, but I enjoyed it. I do remember seeing this cover. I definitely never played the game. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't even.
We're
think
gonna get through this and then be just curious enough where it's like, let's have an episode of Retro Encounter where we play games that we once thought were bad and see if they still are.
Well, I mean, Lagoon and Arcana would be near the top of my list for that, but right up there with Beyond the Beyond. But I'm loath to try and replay any of those games.
That's fair. All right. So our next block is something we don't usually do, but because Peter's songs really paired well together, we're just going to have a whole block of Peter. Yay! So what do we got here, Peter? What are your two songs today?
All right, so my first song for this block is going to be Wonder of Electron from Kingdom Hearts Recoded by Yoko Shimomura. Probably my least favorite game in the Kingdom Hearts series. Still has some pretty good music. And then my second pick for the day is Cipher Peon Battle by Tsukasa Tawada from the Pokémon Colosseum soundtrack. I might catch some flack for saying that Pokémon Colosseum is a bad game. We'll get into that after the jump.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Let's listen to Wonder of Electron and Cipher Peon Battle.
So yeah, starting with Kingdom Hearts Recoded. This game is kind of the low point of the Kingdom Hearts series. Don't shut up, Sollosi. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing. Anyway, never mind. Whatever. Let's not.
I'm not saying anything.
I'm sorry.
You've apologized to me 4 times, and I have not said a word.
Yeah, Recoded is kind of the low point of the Kingdom Hearts series. It's a remake of a cell phone game that came out on the DS, and already that's kind of a weak spot. The DS Kingdom Hearts games, while I enjoyed 3558 over 2 days, it's not particularly fun to play on a D-pad, and Recoded unfortunately has all the same problems. And then the other problem with it is that it's kind of it was at the time kind of an inconsequential part of the story. It really felt like release padding. It's not a very long game. Like, I think I beat it in like 12 hours. It's got a lot of weird like mini games and stuff like that are kind of fun the first time, but I don't know. It's easily my least favorite Kingdom Hearts game, and the whole date escape digital world thing doesn't become important until you get into the other mobile game, which is a whole other can of worms we won't get into here. But that being said, the new songs that are in Coded are actually pretty good. It was a toss-up for me to include this one or No More Bugs, which is the battle theme in this area. You're basically in these little zones where you have to defeat these glitch monsters that spawn in order to progress to the next world. So Wonder of Electron is the music that plays whenever you're not in a battle, and No More Bugs is the music that plays when you are fighting these monsters. I think the song is very peaceful. I think it really does kind of match that, like, you're in cyberspace vibe. It kind of reminds me of like a lot of those like 90s cyberpunk type stories where like you like hackers or something ridiculous like that, where like you've kind of got this like weird techno vision of like what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, like the Angelina Jolie movie Hackers, please.
Yes, I love Hackers. Hackers is hack the planet.
That movie's not a good movie, but it's an amazing movie.
Yes.
Also,
yes,
please see our Songs from the Future episode for more on this topic.
I think, and this is actually, again, Shimomura is a great composer. One thing about this song that I actually like is that the fact that it is a little bit crushed by the DS's audio capabilities, I think it works in its favor, because it kind of gives this song a bit more of an electronic vibe to it. The fact that it kind of has that not quite that kind of tinny sound to it in the background, especially the really crunchy bass.
A lot of DS games, I think, were enhanced if you use that headphone jack in there, because the DS speaker is, is not great. It's a handheld from 2005 or whatever. It's definitely not good. But there's a lot of good DS music out there that is heavily improved if you just use some cheap earbuds, because again, it's not a bad sound chip, but it is a pretty bad speaker.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely.
If it even really has a sound chip, I guess it's all in the processor by the DS era, right?
I'm not 100% sure how that works, honestly.
I'm not 100% sure either.
That's my thoughts on Wonder of Electron. What do you guys think?
I thought it was an interesting thing to hear from Shimomura, just because it is a little bit more of that kind of fragmented, very atmospheric, less of a strong melody than I would expect from her, which made it interesting. There was an interesting key change that I noticed. It was kind of going along a little bit more peaceful, and then there was some modulation, and it sounded a little bit more sad all of a sudden, I think near the middle. But I also happened to notice that like the opening run, the do-do-do-do-do-do, sounds to me like a really peaceful, slowed down version of the beginning of the World Warrior from the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the do 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 at the beginning of that. Yeah. Which is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know who wrote most of the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack?
Yes.
It was Miss Yoko Shimomura.
Yeah.
Oh, she knows. Yeah.
I know.
All right.
We were listening to that song. She's like, wait. Go back again.
Which
Go back
Street Fighter
again.
2 song is this?
I know this is in Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, it's the logo stuff before the bum 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 bum. Yeah, so yeah,
Yep.
all right. That's maybe the Yoko Shimomura soundtrack I know the very best. And I love, you know, a lot of Shimomura's music. I have not played Kingdom Hearts Recoded to the surprise of nobody, but I think it's interesting because like this song doesn't really have a melody. It's like 4 counter melodies all at the same time, where you have the what sounds like the bottom register of a vibraphone and something that can only describe as like synth strings and a very buzzy bass. It's like these. It's 4 sort of electronica sounds that don't really feel like a chamber orchestra or real instruments, but it's like deliberately synthy, deliberately electronic, but quite beautiful and quite pleasant. It's and I think this is maybe why he paired them together. But the other song that we arranged, I mean, Peter, your other selection is I think has like a similar. They almost sound like they could be from the same game, but in tone they're almost total opposites.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I went with Wonder of Electron instead of No More Bugs, because No More Bugs, Mike off the episode described it as being a lot like a Mega Man song, where it's like, and that also is like that very crunchy audio, it's much faster paced, but I didn't want to pick 2 battle themes. I kind of wanted them to contrast each other. We can talk a little bit about the Pokemon Colosseum soundtrack too, if we're done with Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I mean, Pokemon Colosseum. This is a game where I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I know that a lot of people do. A lot of people are still looking for a return to the Ore region after all this time. Going back to Pokemon Colosseum today, and even for the time, it is a very flawed game. I get that at the time we were all pretty excited to have a console RPG Pokemon game, and I think we were willing to overlook a lot of problems because of that. But now that all of the Pokemon games are in 3D and on console, it kind of is irrelevant. A lot of what Colosseum did back in the day isn't really innovative or new anymore. And what are you left with? You're left with a Pokemon game that has a very limited roster of collectible creatures, very bad experience point distribution. Like it is very, you get under-leveled or over-leveled very quickly in this game, and then it makes training your Pokemon much harder. The purification mechanic is annoying. Having to interrupt combat constantly to shout down your shadow Pokemon is annoying. There is a dearth of optional content in this game. Like, there is technically a post game, but it ain't much. And this was back in the day. This was one of the fragmented Pokedex from Generation 3. This was the only way to get Jirachi.
It's the only way to get Jirachi, the only way to get Espeon or Umbreon, because there's no night-day system in the 3rd gen games, and it's the only way to get Entei, Suicune, and Raikou. So, spoiler alert. Yeah, spoiler alert. This is one of the 4 games on this episode that I've played, and it was because I was using Pokemon Colosseum to farm Pokemon for my copy of Leaf Green. When I got back into Pokemon in 2006, when I was a night watchman and really needed a way to pass the time. So I played Leaf Green, bought 4 other Pokemon games to send stuff to Leaf Green, then got really into the Gen 4 games. But that's a whole other thing. So I've played Pokemon Colosseum. The purification thing where you sort of, like your enemy Pokemon have a dark shadow over them, and then you can steal them from the enemy with maybe the worst system. Like imagine the frustration of trying to catch a Pokemon, but the catch rate is really low, so you're blowing all of your Pokeballs trying to get it. Like, imagine the worst version of that, and it's in the middle of a boss battle at the same time. Is how purification works. This is frustrating. Yeah, this is a frustrating game, and the only nice thing I'll say about it is, similar to Pokemon Stadium on the N64, there is something fascinating about putting your GBA cartridge into the Super Game Boy of the GameCube, and so that your Game Boy, your advanced game, and your GameCube game could interact somewhat. That's cool. But
Yes.
other than that, I cannot recommend Pokemon Colosseum because there are way better ways to farm those legendaries now.
Yeah, and not to mention, Colosseum is also completely overshadowed by its much better sequel, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. The jokes write themselves.
Yeah,
But
aka the way to get Ho-Oh or Lugia into your GBA Pokemon games.
well, Ho-Oh was in Colosseum.
Oh yeah,
but
it was just Lugia in that one. Right, you're right.
But oh my god, the hoops you had to jump through to get Ho-Oh in Colosseum. Like, that's a whole other discussion.
Did you say something about shouting down your shadow Pokemon? Because I'm imagining
Oh.
playing Go, like walking down the street going like, God, I know Giovanni hurt you, but what are you doing?
Oh, yeah, no. So your shadow Pokemon only have, when you first get your shadow Pokemon, they only have access to one attack. It's called Shadow Rush. It is a damage-dealing attack that also does recoil damage, which is part of what makes catching shadow Pokemon frustrating, is because they will be constantly hurting themselves. And so they could faint before you get a chance to catch them. That's fun.
I did not beat this game, but I did catch Entei, and then I think I lost my damn mind trying to catch Suicune and gave up. If my memory serves.
But whenever you command a shadow Pokemon to use Shadow Rush, there's a chance they'll enter Hyper Mode, where they stop listening to you and will just spam attacks again. So in order to get that to work, you have to use the built-in Shout command, which wastes a turn but calms down your Pokemon. This happens constantly. Also, in order to purify your Pokemon, you have to constantly battle with them, and have them enter Hyper Mode and then shout them down. That's the best way to reduce it, which means you're in a constant loop of not actually doing anything in battle. Also, purification is affected by your Pokemon's nature, but you can't find out your Pokemon's nature until you've purified them.
It sounds like at least half of this game is just yelling at your Pokemon, which does not sound like a good way of raising them.
No.
Yeah,
No, it really doesn't.
I mean, Pokemon players at this era were excited to have a Pokemon game on the GameCube that had the same vibe as Pokemon Stadium and a single-player story mode. The problem is that none of it was executed well, and just they take the most frustrating parts of the Pokemon experience and amped it up. Like I can corroborate that listener that loves Pokemon Colosseum. This game is not as good as you think it is, but this battle theme is some live wire electronica that is another banger, as the kids say.
And this is the thing, for all of my complaining about Pokemon Colosseum, Colosseum's soundtrack is burned into my memory, and I adore it. Like, this soundtrack rips. It has got so many catchy battle themes, and this is my favorite one on the whole soundtrack. Just the way that electric guitar kicks in and just is going ham, the kind of super fast-paced build-up to the song with the electronic music coming in, and then the way it just kind of, just that dun, 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 dun. Like, I love it. I adore this song, and since you're going to be hearing it a lot, especially if you want to try and catch every Pokemon in this game, it's a good thing that these battle musics are total bangers.
It actually brought to mind, like, some of the spectacle involved with Sword and Shields battles. Like, I could picture this in a stadium with, like, a giant audience in a good way.
Oh, and the final boss fight of Colosseum is exactly like that. It's got, including, like, the crowd noises and everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Colosseum beat Sword and Shield to the punch. In general, that's the one thing I think this game does really well, is its sense of place and the soundtrack. Because these environments are pretty cool looking, and the music absolutely suits the vibe. Like, I could have picked any song from the Colosseum soundtrack and put it on here. Like, I almost picked Pyrite Town, because that song with its, like, constant finger snapping, like, that's been stuck in my brain for years, too. Like, it was a hard pick, but I eventually settled on Cipher Peon Battle just because that electric guitar gets me every time.
Oh, it's fantastic. I don't know what I was expecting, since I haven't played Colosseum. Or is Colosseum really related to Stadium? Because I always thought it was, just based on their names. But...
No, not really. They both have the gimmick of you can connect to your Game Boy Pokemon games, but other than that, they really aren't similar at all.
It's basically it's got a single player story campaign, and then it has a separate battle mode where you can plug in your Game Boy Advance and do some stuff with it.
Okay, because Stadium was like basically mostly just about the battles, right?
And this is not that. It's
Yeah.
even like you only have pre-made rental teams available unless you bring in your Pokemon from Ruby and Sapphire. You don't like get to like pick a team of rental Pokemon like you could in Stadium. It doesn't have any of the mini games from Stadium, so like basically it's Stadium without the fun stuff.
Oh, I see. Well, at least it has good music.
It has great music. And XD, the sequel, basically fixes all of Colosseum's problems, but unfortunately, in the process, it also kind of loses its weird identity, where and is also kind of overshadowed by modern Pokemon games on console. Really, neither one of the OR games are really worth revisiting these days, but we'll always have this soundtrack.
All right. Well, that brings us then to our last block. So my second song of the day, I don't know how contentious this choice will be. I'm going to say probably not too much. But my second song is Altar of the Barrier, or Altar of the Bond, depending on the translation, from the Grandstream Saga, a quintet RPG for PlayStation 1, which is very... we'll say it was received very differently from their three of their Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, because this is like the unofficial fourth Soul Blazer, isn't it?
Sort of, I think so, yeah. Yeah, so we have the Grandstream Saga, and then Hilary, your second song.
Yes, other than the bonus track, we are going to finish up with Adios from the Shadow Hearts from the New World soundtrack, which, again, debatable whether this is a bad game.
I like the air quotes.
Yes, I did air quotes.
Okay.
But for me personally, there are aspects of it that I just really can't deal with or see past. So
yeah.
Also, the music's pretty good, so it's here.
I think I know where you're going with that line of thinking, but we'll have a discussion after the break.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So let's go listen to Altar of the Barrier and Adios. So, shortly, I hope this is short, a brief backstory on my selection here. So, I know Grandstream Saga is not generally well regarded, more so given that it was developed by Quintet, and it's like, this was their first game after Terranigma, which got a very, very different reception than this game, at least for the regions it was released in. So, you know, me, I always thought it was maybe some growing pains for them, like going from, they had a really solid thing going with their 2D games, and this was their first 3D one. So, you know, sometimes that doesn't always turn out so well. But the soundtrack, very different story. The soundtrack is actually credited to 4 people. So some of the songs on here are actually by Kohei Tanaka, a man with a like just ridiculous number of games to his name. Like, I looked him up on VGMDB, and like, I know he did Alundra and some other stuff, but I had no idea his discography was like as extensive as it is. It's just incredibly long. Like, he has been a busy man. But I was listening. I knew I wanted to do this game, but I didn't know the song yet. So I was listening to the soundtrack over on YouTube, and I was listening through it, and I just kept like, you know, mentally bookmarking my favorite songs. And it just so happened that every song I thought, okay, it's going to be one of these, all were composed by the same person of the 4. So this particular one is by Miyoko Kobayashi. And I looked her up as well, and she doesn't seem like incredibly active in composing for games, but she still seems to do like at least one game mostly every year. Sometimes she does some atelier games, and so I had not heard of her before, but yeah, so that's, I guess I decided that she's the star of this soundtrack. Also, she's apparently a really big fan of bunnies. Like, her website is covered in bunnies, and her tweets are like videos of her bunnies and stuff. So, you know, that's cute. Not related to music, but, you know, as a new bunny owner, I thought it was interesting.
I guess that fits with the like atelier profile.
Yeah,
they all look cute.
So, anyway, yeah, that's maybe more information than you needed about, you know, my listening habits on this particular album. But the song, like, I love the instruments that she used on this. There's actually the way the instruments are used, and there's a certain sound to it that I didn't choose it for this, but I noticed that some of it sounds a little bit like some stuff that Hiroki Kikuta did for Kadoka. Waterfall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the battle music, and it's not surprising you should say that, because he pretty much has a reputation for kind of trying to like use synthy versions and try and get that kind of like world instrument sound. Yeah,
and that's what I got out of this one too. So it's like flute or clarinet, but yeah, I guess it's a synth mixed with an instrument. So I couldn't really exactly pinpoint what it is on some of these instruments, but I love the sound of it, and it kind of creates this sense of this, you know, foreign land or a new place that you haven't explored yet. So yeah, so like I said, I was definitely drawn to her songs, but I definitely recommend listening to the album in general.
Yeah, I got the idea that the flute sound was sort of a non-Western instrument, like a Hilary suggested world music. But it's like, this is like a low pan flute, or like a shakuhachi that's not as shrill or something. But both both like the staccato string instrument and this wind instrument both feel like again, like a non-orchestra instrument in a way that made this game feel a little bit East Asian, but not quite, like almost like a Breath of Fire song.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's a very specific instrumentation that I thought was quite beautiful. I mean, I assume this is either like a character-centric theme or maybe a town theme. I doubt it's combat or field music, right? I'm
not totally sure how it's used, but I would imagine that you're right.
And also, this is the one game on this list that I have neither played nor really heard of. Again, I've played my 2 selections as well as Pokemon Colosseum and From the New World, but I haven't, like, I think maybe I've heard the name Grandstream Saga before, but I know 0 things about it. This is my first exposure to this game at all.
You know what? I only know it because it was a game my brother played, and I could never get over the weird, if you've looked up the game, like, it's 3D, but it's so basic 3D, like the characters don't have faces, and it's sort of disturbing to look at. because they don't have faces because it's a lot of times it's top down, so like who cares? But then when there's conversations going on, they do pan the camera down, and you just see these no-faced people talking to each other. It's like odd.
Is this game entirely department store mannequins?
All right, that's the way I'm going to interpret it. Just to, if I ever play it, to get through the game, it's just or maybe like friendly robots.
Okay.
Robot world.
Less disturbing than just no-face people.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, it's like every character is from the Dark World and Coraline or something. This sounds a little disturbing. Hey, that's a good movie with some very creepy imagery.
Yes.
It's some talented voice actors too. John Hodgman's in that movie. I love that guy.
Not to mention the weird little They Might Be Giants musical cameo.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. But and speaking of Tim Burton, I mean, are you excited for the Wednesday Addams show? Because I am. But all right. And anyway, back to Grand Stream Saga. Yeah, this song is cool, but I know zero other things about Grand Stream Saga, so I can't meaningfully contribute here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this song kind of rules. Like, I really enjoyed this one. I really like the pipe organ kind of in the background, that kind of slow, ominous buildup before it like kicks into the main melody. The couple little like drum beats that are play like at different intervals, like the like. That's super cool. I love that. It gives this song so much atmosphere. It's a very moody song.
It is, and I think it's got a lot of little characteristics that kind of elevate it above maybe a lot of other like, this is a mysterious place kind of songs. Like, I love some of the transitions and the melody taking over at about a minute in, and then there's a fade out, and it really sounds like it could come from just any number of extremely successful like PS1 RPG soundtracks. And it's got a fun like call and response between some of the instruments. But yeah, really good choice.
Thank you. All right. You ready to talk about yours?
Yes. Okay, so Shadow Hearts 3. Anybody who's followed the podcast probably knows that I am a big fan of the Shadow Hearts series in general. First two games, I had so much fun playing them. There are some good things about From the New World, and there are some things about From the New World that just kind of eventually prevented me from playing it.
I played the beginning of Shadow Hearts From the New World, and I enjoyed parts of it.
Yep.
I think choosing a setting of 1920s United States is interesting. So and combining like Chicago City with Amazon rainforest and sort of wild western frontier, like that's all interesting. I think Mao is delightful and Frank is hilarious. Yep. But then when they ever try to do something dramatic or have any native representation on screen, this game is problematic. Oh boy, it has aged badly.
Yes, it really has.
And I say this I'm not as deep into Shadow Hearts as you are, Hilary, and probably not as deep as Peter is either. Because Peter, I know you're an appreciator of Shadow Hearts 1, but Shadow Hearts 2 Covenant is so special, and for this game to be like make you like tense up and stand back is a big disappointment. So I understand coming from a perspective that this game is good, but there are certain things that are about From the New World that are hard to hard to process in it. That's all I'm gonna say. But the song's good.
Yeah. You basically, we knew we were going to have some of the same reasoning. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically it. Like unfortunately, the Native American representation is something that I could not look past. There's a lot going on with it.
So we're mostly here to talk about the music, but for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going way too literal, real life right now, but we're watching Deadwood right now. Where Deadwood is set, the way they refer to Native Americans and Asian people is incredibly offensive.
Yes.
Although I imagine historically accurate. But I'm guessing there's something else in this game.
That is not the case with this. This is really just kind of if I had to explain it, I'd say it's an unfortunate combination of stereotypes and conflating information about very, very different peoples. Among other things.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I have not gotten super far into From the New World, but I understand. From now on, when I think of native representation in From the New World, I think of the Dvorak Symphony and nothing else.
It kind of reminds me of how apparently how in America we have weeaboos and otaku who are really into Japanese culture, but in Japan they have people who are really into westerns.
I think dressing like a cowboy and enjoying Western films is one thing, but there are certain visual choices that this game makes it's okay to be a Japanophile. It's okay to be a lover of the Old West, but then there are certain steps that make it inappropriate, and sometimes it gets inappropriate.
I've seen the fetish doll main character girl From the New World, so I totally see where you're coming from.
We've made it clear why we think this game is, to use a catch-all adjective, problematic.
Yes.
That being said, though, I do love me some good acoustic guitar, and this song really hits a sweet spot for that.
So this song is some really neat flamenco guitar, courtesy of the mariachi character in the game, Ricardo, who I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but you first run into him performing in Chicago at one of Al Capone's joints, and then he joins your party later because, plot-related reasons, something bad happens to someone he cares about, so he joins the party to get revenge.
I have to wonder though, because you have a mariachi character who I think has a gun hidden in his guitar.
Yep.
Is there some Rob Rodriguez, Antonio Banderas, El Mariachi going on here?
It sort of feels that way to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
All it's missing is Danny Trejo with a character named after some kind of blade, and we're in.
Yep, exactly. It's funny because talking about the song itself, I just have a serious weakness for the classical guitar, and that is the main reason I picked this one. Also because it's Adios, and I was really hoping it would be the last song in the last block.
Well, it is.
Yay!
I mean, I didn't put it at the end just for that reason, but it was a good incentive.
But the bonus track is going to be second Adios.
It is. It's also going to be a little weird, but that's okay.
Yes.
Weird is good.
Oh wait, no, I don't know what it is. I can't wait to hear.
I guess, just kind of a random aside, the way you Ricardo's weapons, it's just really funny, and they another frustrating thing is I do think Shadow Hearts 3 gets some of the goofy humor that you see in Covenant, and one of these things is Ricardo's guitar upgrades, where he goes from a simpler gun guitar to a rocket launcher gun guitar.
Wow, nice.
And there's a little bit of kind of meta description and kind of poking fun at that. We're not really sure how this works, but now he has a rocket launcher.
Yeah, I've seen bits. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Frank the one, because I know Scott was streaming this at some point, is Frank the one who tries to grab the sword from the stone, but just ends up swinging the sword and the stone around? He just seems like this ridiculous character. Yeah,
Frank is a World War I veteran who has PTSD, escaped to the Amazon rainforest, and believes he is a successor to a certain style of ninja. So he is a white man in his 40s who believes he's a ninja and lives in the Amazon rainforest. And
Yes.
if you don't, and if you aren't laughing or at least admiring that description, then I'm not sure we can be friends.
No, I'm there. Yeah, see, so that's too bad. There obviously is some stuff about this game that sounds really compelling.
There are funny and interesting things about this game, but then it crosses a few lines that are just not appropriate.
I'm not even sure I disagree with the decision about them making it having America as a setting. There is a lot of opportunity there, but also
You could even say it's a land of opportunity.
yes, indeed. But also making it a side story, kind of about the aftermath of a certain event early on. Well, no, about halfway through Shadow Hearts 2, from the consequences of some kind of random American family getting some of the power of the Emigre manuscript.
Oh.
And yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, but
I mean,
it's part of it is it does actually fit into the canon as a side story.
And maybe we can cut this out, but the other thing about From the New World that rubbed me the wrong way, that's unrelated to native imagery, is the vampire character.
Yes, I was just
body dysmorphia is also a very bad message. Yeah. Although I think it's not as egregious as the native stuff, but it's not good. It's a bad choice.
No, but it made me so concerned because anybody with any sort of like eating disorder and just like that fluctuation of, sometimes she's thin, sometimes she's curvy.
Mhm.
Just like, I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
unhealthy,
Yeah.
upsetting.
Like Joaquin's stats or his bat form changing based on the time of day or phases of the moon is kind of great because it's like he's turning into different colors of bat or something. But for like, you can interpret this as body dysmorphia on screen, changing gameplay, and that's just not good. You don't want that.
No.
Yep.
If they made it that she could like eat giant cakes or something for boosts of power, that would have been fine. But having her go from fat to skinny to fat again with her attacks changing depending on if she was fat or skinny is just bad.
Dear.
Because I mean the idea of a vampire that loves sweets instead of blood is actually not the worst. But this game
I
has
like it.
Yeah, this game has plenty of other bad choices.
Sorry, Wes. I know you want to like it, but I also know you know these things.
Well, I think Wes will forgive you, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Anyway, let's talk about what's coming up next on the show. We are doing, I hope I have my episodes in order, right? Yes. So in a couple weeks, we're doing an episode on the Sega Genesis. We did a Super Nintendo episode a few weeks ago, and I want to do a companion one with the Super Nintendo's competitor at the time. We have a Genesis RPG episode. After that, I may switch the order, but we're either going to do Pokemon or a composer episode for Masafumi Takada, who's done Danganronpa and some other games that you may know, even if you may not know the composer by name. So that is what is coming up next on Rhythm Encounter. If you have feedback on this show, you can email us at music@rpgfan.com. We'd love to know what you think. If you are a major fan of Unlimited Saga or Grandstream Saga, let me know. Hey, it could happen.
If you're a super fan of Lagoon or Arcana, please do not contact me. Just move on with your life, and you do you. I do not want to engage in either of those discussions. No thanks.
If you like Pokemon Colosseum, reach out to me and we can vibe out to the soundtrack together.
I'm trying to decide if we should do contact information or skip it this time. But that said, if you want to reach me directly, you can get to me at mike@rpgfan.com. Hilary, how can people reach you?
Discord's the easiest way. I'm EP Fire there. And like I said, specific reasons for my choices.
Yeah. How about you, Sollosi?
I am very easy to find on the internet. I am at The Real Monsoon on Twitter most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike.
And Peter?
You can find me at I Have Fury on Twitter. You can also reach out to me, peterT@rpgfan.com.
Awesome. I don't always do this, but I want to mention this time that, if you're new to the show or don't go through all of our show notes, that we do have the full track list in the show notes. And then if you click through the show notes to RPG Fan, our post on the site, we have links where you can look up more information on these albums. So you can find our reviews, places to buy and stuff like that. I want to mention it here because there's a few albums here or a few soundtracks here that didn't get albums or are impossible to get. So like Arcana and Lagoon, you probably not be able to buy. Pokemon never got an album. Grandstream Saga is long out of print. So if it's something you can still get to somewhere, we have a link. Otherwise, we are starting to link to YouTube playlists just to make it easier on you. So there'll be a few of those in this episode because otherwise there's really no good way to listen to this stuff anymore. So be sure to check that out. Also be sure to check out our other podcasts. Every other Monday in between Rhythm Encounter, we have Random Encounter, our general RPG podcast. Talks about current topics and new reviews and features on RPG Fan. And every Thursday we have Retro Encounter. And as always, Sollosi, I'm going to let you introduce it because you are here.
Sure. I am the showrunner for the podcast Retro Encounter. It is a weekly show that has a game journal every week where we have a specific theme or a specific game that we discuss over multiple episodes. And in between game journals, we have a variety of topics. Recently for the podcast, we did an episode drafting Suikoden characters onto custom-made teams. And coming up soon on the podcast, we have an episode celebrating the legacy of the Nintendo 3DS. So if any of that sounds remotely interesting, check out Retro Encounter on the RPG Fan Podcast feeds. We have over 340 episodes by now, so there's plenty of backlog to roll through.
It's true. All right. Yes. So please check out our podcast. Check us out on social media. We're always streaming stuff on Twitch and, the website at rpgfan.com. If you would be so kind and feel like reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen, we would appreciate that. We love reviews and subscriptions and comments and feedback. All right. I think we're good. So someone here has a bonus track. I guess you already gave away it was you, Hilary.
Yeah, I guess I did.
All right. What are we doing here?
So this is one I didn't want to put in the actual episode because everybody knows that I like Mist. But this was just a really, really cool song. And it is from Mist Uru, which is the really strange failed Mist MMO.
Yeah.
Which sounds like it could.
All right.
Which could be. It sounds like it could be really cool in concept, right? Like exploring, ruins full of books that transport you to different worlds. Like, unfortunately, it didn't quite work. You can still play the game, but. Anyway, there's just this beautiful theme that comes in, the gallery theme, and just it hits you in the face with how pretty it is. And it's a vocal track, which we haven't had. So here it is.
What is it?
It's the gallery theme.
It's just called the gallery theme?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. All three of you, thank you for being here. This was a very interesting time, but it was a lot of fun. So we're going to close out with the gallery theme from Mist Uru. Bye.
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 Is your bunny male or female?
Female.
Okay, cool.
As far as we know.
If I had to identify bunny genitalia, I'm not sure I could. So no, I'm no help.
I mean, I haven't looked. I just know that she was so young when we got her from the pet store. They're like, we don't know yet, but it's probably a girl.
I guess we'll find out at our vet visit.
I mean, yeah, if we come back from the vet and it's like, oh, actually it's a boy. It's like, well, then his name is still Matoya. So we're not changing that now.